I recently saw this, and I'm just reading it out of a University of Michigan kind of study here, or just research, that they actually FDA approved recently tumor-destroying sound waves for liver treatment in humans. So there's obviously an application even in conventional medicine
Right.
for chronic disease. Now, I know we can't make any medical claims here or anything like that, but anecdotally, through practitioners that you're working with and HUSO is offering services and everything, what have you seen with people that may have some chronic conditions and utilizing HUSO to benefit their health or optimize some things?
Well, I think the testimonials we get and kind of anecdotal evidence it blows me away every day, really.
Yeah.
And it's not just HUSO. I mean, HUSO is one of the tools. It's one of the things, as we say. You reset the patient, bring them into a parasympathetic state, and then they respond really well to the other modalities they're going through. But we've seen all kinds of autoimmune people from having lupus or even MS, Parkinson's disease. And I'm not saying that we're curative or anything like that, but definitely bringing benefit to those patients and maybe just being relaxed or whatever. And they're with MS, you've got the myelin sheath is basically getting demyelinated. So the nerve patterns, you need to get other nerve patterns around that. So with the sound, as we are putting the wrists and ankles, it's basically sending an oscillating waveform through the fascia of the body. And that's the fascia of the body's almost like the analog system. So you have nerves, you have say you had the digital system, which are the nerves, the firing on, off, on, off. And when those nerves get compromised by the immune system going after the proteins and the myelin sheaths on them, they basically become dysfunctional. So that's why you have all the problems with MS, multiple sclerosis, where the vision starts going, different things like that. But if you can basically wake up the signaling around in that fascia, this analog system of the body, which we know little about. I mean, the Chinese, I think, were really onto something when they were talking about the meridians and the way, but you can, dissect someone, you're not going to find the meridians. There's not little pathways, but the Chinese were keen at observing and seeing, if we basically stimulate a point on the hand here, we can get visual problems, or we can, take care of headaches, or, and they saw how they basically developed a system that overlapped with their observations, and their observations were very keen about that. So, but I think where it really turns into is through the fascia. So you have different things that are happening in acupuncture where you have like biochemical reactions to causing changes in the body. The body's responding to the trauma. But with sound, you're not really getting that micro trauma, but you are getting an oscillation that's going up the fascia. And there's a lot of silica in the fascia. Our pads have basically a quartz crystal in them as well, so that vibration goes and it translates. And this is an area, in frequency medicine, you were saying how there's a lot of devices. Frequency medicine is it's such a vast area and such vast possibilities. Nikola Tesla said it all comes down to frequency. I'm not exactly the full quote is, but essentially that everything in the universe is frequency, and it's based on frequency and how that is. And that the more that I work and experience HUSO and seeing the things that, all and other sound therapies as well, like you were talking about the frequency that could kill tumor cells in the liver. And that's an idea, a way of focusing frequency, like a very specific frequency. Whereas we're kind of more holistic frequency. So that's a really good kind of example of different ranges of how you can use frequency. I know that in Rife too, there's been things where Lyme disease, you can use frequency to basically, from my understanding, basically kill the Lyme bacteria or whatever that, that's not my area of expertise, but we do work with Lyme patients as well, not for that reason, but for kind of resetting and balancing. So I think, it's this huge area that's not really well understood. And I think the more that we get into it and seeing what's happening, for example, there's a point where sound and light kind of combine. And so, and you start really getting it. It's a whole nother conversation that we can have, but where that's going, that signaling, and basically what's happening in the fascia of your body, almost like fascia. If I'll just give it fascia for those who kind of wondering, myofascial release, all these things, but fascia is like when you're peeling a chicken and you have that thin skin that's everywhere that goes through. That's essentially the fascia of the body. We have that as well, and I think there's a lot of very subtle electromagnetic communication that's happening in the body, and it's still just a huge area to be discovered. And
there's a lot of the information highway that goes through the fascia, and a lot of signaling and cell-to-cell communication that happens there that triggers a lot of other things within the body. So it's an important place to look at that conventional medicine usually overlooks or doesn't really see that too much. And I have to say, like, going back to your point of like light and sound, like I love the idea of acupuncture with light, just like you could do with sound. You're saying that idea. We even have a watch that goes on the points here in the wrist around the radial artery. So you could stimulate the radial artery for biochemical reactions of light, things like yellow light produce vitamin D, serotonin uplift within, but you're also stimulating the points within the wrist that are acupuncture points to also have a reaction. So I find that interesting because most people think of acupuncture as needles all throughout the body. You're just sitting there laying and you got to stick a needle. No, that is just one form of stimulation, right? That's actual physical stimulation of a point. That is a very traditional way, but you can look at it in a kind of modern way that you can use technology to stimulate that through frequencies, sound, light, all these other things that are going to have a very similar reaction, if not sometimes a little bit more technical. If you're using a very specific frequency of light that goes down, penetrates very specifically, just like you were to use sound in frequencies that are very specific, you get a more specific reaction than just the stimulation through a physical point.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting if you think about it, like with biochemical medicine, with a pill, for example. You take a pill, about 95% of that's just gone. It's digested, it's whatever. And then, so it's 6, but with sound, you're absorbing that entire frequency. You're bypassing, or with light, so it and sound penetrates very, deeply, non-invasively into the, and is taken up by the body. But there can be harmful sound too. So it's not just like all sound is good for you.
And that's like Masaru Emoto's work with sound, with basically crystals, right? Water crystals. And if you play a heavy metal rock, that's kind of like death grunge. You get a very dysregulated crystallization of those molecules in water. Whereas if you play something beautiful, Tchaikovsky or some kind of gospel or hymn, or, even the meditations and chants of Gregorian chants, you have this beautiful crystal that goes through it. So, and again, we are 70%, if not more, 99% molecularly, we are water. And that's very important that we are structured properly. And then that has an effect on our health.